We're going to start the creation process of our stylized tank with the top turret section. So this is the bit that the gun part attaches to. And we're going to be learning our first tool, which is the Muticut tool. So we'll start off with a simple cube in our scene. So I'm just going to go up to our shelf here in the top left-hand corner and just click on our cube shape or polygon. And with that selected, I'm just going to press our F key, zoom out a little bit, and then I'm going to press W, which brings up my move tool, and I'm going to move this up. The first thing I want to do is just start to get in our very, very basic shape for the turret section. So for this, I'm going to use the scale tool. So I'm going to press R on the keyboard, and I'm going to start to create the top turret section shape. So I know from this angle, I want the shape to taper down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is hold down right click. I'm going to go to edge. I'm going to select the edge subcomponent on the left hand side. And I'm going to use the move tool. So I'm going to press W. I'm just going to move this down to create like a little bit of a taper here. Now, in terms of being able to create more shape, I'm a little bit limited with the edges and vertex that I've got at my disposal within this shape. So what I want to start doing is adding some more detail, adding some more edges, vertices and faces, so that I can then add a little bit more shape to the object. So I'm going to head over into my modeling toolkit, and if you're not seeing this, just make sure that your workspace is in the modeling standard mode, and you should have a modeling toolkit tab on the right hand side of your screen, and it will look like this. And this is where we're going to most of our tools that we'll be using in this tutorial will be located. So we've got some like nice quick shortcuts that we can use. And the first tool that we're going to use is the Muticut tool. And this is so that we can start adding some more shape detail to our basic cube. So I'm going to click on the Muticut tool here, and I'm going to head over into the viewport here. Now what it allows us to do is to place vertices and edges, additional vertices and edges across the object. So the first thing we need to think about is where do we want to add shape. So what I want to kind of create is a little bit of a diamond shape on the object. So the first cut I'm going to create is halfway and vertically across where my mouse is moving. So to do this, I'm first of all going to hold down Control, and that will give me a loop of edges that you can see. So not just one single edge cut, but a loop of edges, which is what we want in this instance. And then I'm going to hold down Shift. And what Shift will do is it will mean that I can add a cut exactly perfectly halfway across the object. And it also allows me, if I hover over each section, it also allows me to place edges at different percentage increments in 10% increments. But what I want to do in this instance is add the 50% cut. So I'm just going to click where it's got 50%. And then what I'm going to do, I've currently still got the Muticut tool activated. So anywhere I click on the object, it's going to cut it, which I might not necessarily want. So as soon as I'm finished using the tool, I'm going to use the shortcut Q, and that's just going to bring me back to my standard selection mode. And that means I can start to move around the object and have a look at what we've created here. So we've added an edge loop that goes all the way around our cube shape. And what this means is we can now go, if we're in object mode, we can now go into edge mode and select this loop of edges, and we can start making some changes. So what I'm going to do here, I am going to scale, go into my scale tool, because I want to create a little bit of a shape, of a diamond shape, as we mentioned earlier. So I'm going to bring this section out a little bit. So we have a little bit of that diamond shape starting to come in. I'm going to now go back and create another cut. So I'm going to go back to my multi-cut tool. And this time we're going to focus on the horizontal edge here. And again, I'm going to hold down Control to get our loop. Then I'm going to hold down Shift so that we can snap to different increments. And this time I'm going to go for a 60% increment because we don't want it to be like a perfect diamond. We kind of want it to be a little bit of a more of a kite shape. So we'll create this edge loop here. Then I'm going to go back into my standard selection mode using the shortcut key Q. Double click on this edge loop, and this time I'm going to scale it out in this axis. We start getting a little bit more of that diamond shape. Now to exaggerate this shape even more and to start getting a little bit more of the turret shape, I'm going to go hold down right click and go to face, and I'm going to select the front two faces. So I've selected one face. Now I'm going to hold down Shift so that I can select two faces at the same time. I can release Shift, and then I'm going to use my standard navigation. So holding down Alt, I'm going to move around to the back of the object. And once again, I make sure I hold down Shift and then click. So that was selecting the fourth face. And then once again, I'll select that face there. So we got the front face and the front faces and the back faces selected. So now I'm going to hold down Alt and just bring my camera back around to the front and maybe have a little bit of a top view so we can kind of see the shape that it's creating from that angle. And I'm going to press R to scale, and I'm going to scale all of those faces down in this X-axis. I'm going to scale that down, and now we're getting much more of that sort of turret shape that we are looking for. We're getting close now to getting in that basic kite / diamond shape that we wanted to achieve for our turret. But there's a few more things that we want to do before we move on to the next stage for this object. The first thing is, at the moment, these edges, if you can see where my mouse is, are quite straight. So we probably want to add a little bit of a curve here where it tapers out a little bit in the middle. So I'm going to select the object, and I'm going to use the multi-cut tool again to add some edges. So holding down Control with the tool activated, and then Shift to snap to that 50%. So we've got a cut edge loop. We've created an edge loop all the way in the middle, all the way around in the middle. So I'm going to switch into edge mode, and I'm just going to scale this out, making sure I'm using the center cube to scale uniformly. And I'm going to scale that out, and you can see we're getting a little bit more of that curve that we want. This can be smoothed at a slightly later stage in the process, but for now we just want to add a little bit of that curve in to our object. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to have a look at the object from a perfect side angle. The way to do this is, if I select the object, I'm just going to press Q to reset my my selection mode to the default selection tool. And I'm going to go up to this little view cube in the top right hand corner of the viewport, and I'm going to click on left. Just going to click on left. You can see that will bring me to a nice perfect dead on side angle view of our turret. And you can see one thing you might notice is we've got a little bit of a problem here where our taper that we've got, so one side shorter and one side longer, is a little bit out of line just here. So to fix this, I'm just going to go into our vertex mode, and I'm going to select the culprit vertices that are causing the problems, which is these two. I'm I'm going to make sure I'm in my left view so I can see what I'm doing. So click on left again, and I'm going to press W, and I'm going to bring those up so that they're nice and in line with the taper that we've got in the rest of the model. And then the last thing I want to have a look at is the front angle. So once again, I'm going to click on the object and I'm going to press on the front part of this view cube. And you can see if we move the camera up a little bit, this front part is looking a little bit flat as well. So I'm going to go into my vertex mode, select this vert, and use the move tool just to bring that up a little bit. So we've just got like a little bit of that shape coming in at the front. What you might notice so far with our model is that our edges are looking very, very sharp, and in places our model is feeling a little bit blocky and sort of pixelated. So we're going to use or introduce a tool called Bevel, and it will allow us to take our really sharp edges and add a nice smooth curve that we can control on our model. So we'll start off with this edge that we made, which was the reason that we added this edge is so that we can add a little bit more of a rounded taper in the middle of the object, this section here. But at the moment, because we only have one edge describing the shape, we haven't got that nice smooth curve that we were intending. So we'll start with this, and I'm going to go to edge selection mode, double click to select the whole of the edge loop, and I'm going to head to my modeling toolkit, and this time we're going to use the bevel tool. So I'm just going to click on bevel, and what we'll get is a little option box here, and we're mainly going to be focusing on the fraction and the segments. So we'll start off with the fraction, and that will basically allow us to control the intensity of the curve that we're trying to create. So we want this to be a nice, smooth, evenly paced curve. So I'm just going to place them around, let's say here, around here. The segments allows us to control the resolution of the curve, or how many edges are going to be describing the curve. So using more segments allows us to get a smoother curve on our object. So if we just have a look around the object now, and we can see we are getting a much more smoother curve. So if we wanted this to be more smoother, we can add more segments and adjust that fraction. But I'm going to stick with what we had just before, and we have this sort of nice curve along the middle section of our object. So if we come off of this, we can see what it looks like, and we see we're getting much more of that curve in the silhouette of the object, which is exactly what we wanted. The next section I'm going to focus on is the outer edges of the tank. So that includes this section, this top section here, the bottom section, as well as the 4 original corners of our original cube shape. I'm going to very quickly go over how we can select these edges efficiently. So for our top section, I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to double click. You can see that basically selects that whole side of edges at the same time. So I'm going to do the same here, just click on one edge and double click, double click, double click. So that means I've only had to select half of the edges rather than all of them. I'm going to do the same for the bottom, so I'm going to move my camera down and just double click, double click and double click. So I have all of those selected. Now with these edges, these horizontal edges that we want to select, we're going to use a slightly different selection method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Shift and select the first edge. And then I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, and then I'm going to hold down Shift again and double click. And what that will do is it will select all of the edges in between my selection. So once again, I'll demonstrate it again. So I'm going to hold down Shift, select the first edge, go all the way down to the bottom, and then double click, and that will allow me to select that whole line of edges. It's just a little bit of a time saver that we can use. I'm going to do the same for these edges behind. So hold down Shift, double click, hold down Shift, double click, and now we have all the edges selected and we're ready to apply our bevel to this section of the model. So once again, go to my modelling toolkit and click on bevel. And same principle again, we can adjust the fraction and segments to get the kind of curve that we want in this part of the object. Now I'm thinking, because we're kind of working on a metal object, I want our edges to be a little bit curved, but not too soft and curvy. We want the object to look solid and not kind of spongy and soft. So I'm going to go with a sharper edge. So this means we'll adjust the fraction. But the first thing I'm going to do is have a look at the segments, because at the moment we have got a face with three edges, and we want to try our best to avoid this for the time being. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in an additional segment, and you can see now that's resolved that triangle into faces with 4 edges. So for this kind of bevel, we'll stick to even numbers for our segments, and we'll adjust our fraction, and we can have a very, very sort of sharp edge, or we can opt for a little bit more of a softer edge. I'm going to go a little bit in between the two because we are working with a stylized model, so we have a little bit of freedom or artistic freedom in this. So I'm going to go potentially about here. So we've got a little bit of a curve, but it's not looking too soft and squidgy, or what a tank should look like. So there's a couple more bevels that I want to add to this object, and you might notice that we still have a little bit of a blocky looking edge here, and also at the front here as well. So let's start with this midsection here. We'll add another bevel, so I'm going to make sure that I am double clicking and selecting the entire edge loop here. And then once again, go to bevel in our modelling toolkit. Bevel in our modelling toolkit. And I am going to reduce the fraction because I want this again to be quite a sharp corner on our model. So I'm going to adjust the fraction accordingly, and I'm going to add in an additional segment just so that we're getting that nice smooth curve. I want it to be a little bit softer than our main corners on the object, and I think that works quite well with the 2 segments. And the last bevel I'm going to do is for this edge loop going around our object, and I just want to smooth out these sections here, which are very sharp at the moment, especially from our top angle. So I'll double click on one of the edges, which will select the entire edge loop, and once again I will go to bevel. So I'm adding an additional segment in and potentially just adjusting that fraction, and I can still see it looks a little bit blocky here, and I really want these sections to be smooth. I think I'm going to add in one additional segment there. Let's see. Go to object mode. Back to object mode and we'll have a look around the object.